Welcome to What is Going Om for new thought from the edge of Om. Each week on OMTimes flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandie Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Om. Here is your host, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello. Life is full of choices, and according to this week's guest, each one of us is offered opportunities to choose between surviving and thriving, managing risk and enhancing risk, opening and closing, giving and receiving, living a balance between solitude and community. We can choose to enlarge our sense of things when pain and fear make us small, and we can choose to delight in the never-ending practice of course correcting and tuning as we go. Mark Nepo has been moving and inspiring people for over 40 years, a poet, mystic, spiritual advisor, and teacher who's regarded as one of the finest spiritual guides of our time. He's authored more than 24 books with over 1 million copies sold in 20 languages. He's a frequent guest on Oprah Winfrey's Super Soul Sunday program and one of the OWN Network's Super Soul 100 group of inspired leaders using their gifts and voices to elevate humanity. Mark Nepo joins us now to discuss his latest book, Falling Down and Getting Up, Discovering Your Inner Resilience and Strength, which helps readers view adversity from a new perspective that transforms life's challenges into a chance for deepening and renewal. Mark Nepo, welcome.
Oh, thank you. It's wonderful to see you again and be with you.
You too. Mark, you're such a prolific writer, and I know you have many sources of inspiration, but I'm curious to know, what is it that impels you over that bridge from inspiration to action, from merely pondering a topic to wanting to write a book about it?
Yeah, thank you. So I think one of the things, as you know from earlier in my life, I was a cancer survivor, and from that time on, I think one of the gifts for still being here was the ability to see the extraordinary in the ordinary. And so I feel like an inner explorer, and the books are become notes from the trail. and so as a young writer, like so many people, I was taught, like artists in any form really, to be on the look for good material, right? And but after almost dying and still being here, that all changed, because everything is worth our attention and our heart and our mind. And so as long as I am open-hearted, and being human, I can't be wholehearted all the time, but sometimes I fall down and I'm half-hearted. These goes into the choices and the falling down and getting up. But when I am wholehearted, the miracle shows itself in a fly on a window. And so for me, the devotion to praising that, confirming that, unpacking that, and the constant lessons, is really at the heart of the lineage of storytelling from the beginning of time. And doing so and this is so important, not just for writers, but for everyone, doing so is enlivening. It's actually medicine for all of us.
When I saw the title Falling Down and Getting Up, I thought, how much is there to say about that? Is there enough to fill a book? And there was. There was. But I don't know whether I would have been able to find enough to fill a book. Tell me, what was the inspiration for this one?
Well, one of the amazing, my publisher, Joel Fotinos, for St. Martin's Essentials, he really prompted me with this most wonderful invitation, because he was noting that that I taught. I'm such an active teacher. And he said, you really teach so much. And he kept asking me about my teaching. And then he had this wonderful question, Sandie. He said, well, if someone couldn't be in one of those circles, what experience of a book would be closest to that? And what a wonderful invitation. And so I wound up going through some of my own kind of history of teaching and saying, oh, there was this session, and oh boy, there was this one that was powerful, and I learned so much, and so did Pete. And I started to put a constellation, and as well as my own current interests, obviously in my own journey of falling down and getting up. And then in the center of the book, um, so then I started to put this together this way. And at the center of the book, the center section, I've had so many people during the pandemic ask me about pain, fear, and grief. And so I really wanted to have the heart of the book uh, just explore those deep teachers that no one really, we don't ask for, we don't sign up for. We go, no, no, I'm over here, no. But we all have our conversations with them, and so to keep and as with all my books, what I share are examples, not instructions,
Yes.
because we're all in this together.
Yeah. It's we seem to be we're losing so many people. We've lost so many people. It seems to be, the numbers seem to be much bigger than they've ever been before. And one of the things that I'm really pleased about is how death, dying, grief, pain, are beginning to be spoken about now. I see quite a lot of books being published on these topics, and that's a good thing because these are the things that we all want to avoid.
Absolutely. And I think this helps because to reframe that, often, people will say, oh, grief, oh, that's a downer. Well, no, everyone experiences these things. It's just most of us don't talk about it.
Mm.
And it's actually helpful, and it disseminates the acuteness of the pain to share it, to distribute the weight of it by being truthful about our experience. And so it's not, to me, these things are not in a frame of positive or negative, but we speak about what's real, what's authentic, what's happening. And one of the great teachers for me over the last I guess 10 years or so has been this paradox that all things are true. All things aren't fair, all things aren't just, but all things are true. And while we're very well trained with our amazing minds to sort, prioritize, and choose, every deep lesson I've ever learned has come from my heart absorbing and integrating,
Mm.
not choosing. And so how do we stay open to the truth of our experience until a deeper logic of the spirit shows itself?
Mm. So the title, why did you pick that
Well,
particular title?
that comes from in medieval times when monks were asked to practice their faith. They said by falling down and getting up, and I love that. And there actually are discovered in other traditions. In the Japanese tradition, there is a proverb that says, fall down 7, get up 8. And even, it reminds me when I went through my cancer journey, I had a surgery. I had one of my surgeries, I had a rib removed from my back. And when I woke up, there was this kind, gruff nurse. I mean, I was barely awake. And she said, get up, we're going to walk. And I thought, you're going to walk? I don't know what else. Really? And, but then she said, uh, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah.
And all these years later, in exploring this book, that it very much is the rhythm of how we heal. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And then I learned, in addition to that, that's also the rhythm of how we spiritually grow. In the Hindu Upanishads, there's this wonderful image, metaphor, where they talk about spiritual growth is like a caterpillar. When it moves, it bunches up and moves back, and then it moves forward. It bunches up and then it moves forward, which is the 2 steps forward one. And so, nobody likes to fall down. Again, we don't say, "Oh, I'll take 2 of those." No. But when we can open up to the rhythm of that over our life, actually falling down and getting up becomes a dance. We all do it. And the question is, what is the rhythm of your dance? And how do
Mm.
we remember that we will fall down, but we will help each other up? And saying yes to life is the commitment to get up one more time than we fall down.
I love that visual of the caterpillar, and you're absolutely right, because we focus. If we fail at something, even if we move on as we have to do, life goes on. We don't always think of that as getting up. We think of it, the failure's still there. We've still failed, but actually, in getting up, we haven't failed.
No, we haven't. And it even invites a different frame for just like positive and negative for success and failure. It's understandable, but as human beings, our initial sense of, failing means often not getting what we want or not hitting what we
Mm.
aim for. And that really has nothing to do with failure. That life is aiming and missing, and not just missing, but discovering the unexpected gifts that we couldn't have foreseen.
Mm.
If we all uh, arrived at everything we aimed for, life really actually wouldn't be as full as it could be, because I I need so much more than I can foresee.
Mm. You say that much of our spiritual practice centers on learning how to see things as they are. Is that really possible? Because everybody seems to, view the world through a lens that is shaped by their experiences, their conditioning, their background, etc. Do we ever see things as they really are, or only as we think they are?
Well, I think we do, and I think just as we fall down and get up. Um, I see and then I don't see. I'm clear and then I'm confused. And so this is the rhythm of return, of course correcting. But let's back up and say, as we speak about this, I'm reminded of a wonderful tradition in the Native American culture, how elder councils meet. And they have for hundreds of years, and they still do. They meet in circle, not just for equity, because there's no head to a circle, but so that everyone has a direct view of the center. And I
Mm.
love that because I found this on the web. Because yeah, the watches, because no one view is enough.
Yeah.
We need so it's not about what you see versus what I see. The beautiful ethic assumed there is whatever we put in the center, we need everybody's view, like facets to a prism. So that means we gather meaning, we don't choose it. So I'm not, the older I get, I'm not interested in debate or persuasion or argument. It really is a distraction. This supports that all things are true. So say we put heartache in the middle, or grief, as we were talking. Well, I speak about what it is for me, and seeing it as things are for me, for each of us. We, as human beings, we have this. We can't help it. We have this psychological reflex. We inflate or deflate our experience or how we see ourselves. And seeing things as they are is, can we right size things even briefly to see them accurately? Because then we have real choices. So if heartache or grief is in the center of that circle, speak the truth for me, and you're on the other side of the circle, and you share what it is for you. And now someone over here says, but for me, it's like this. Well, we don't have to argue. We've actually deepened our understanding of grief by including everyone's view. And of course, obviously today, we've lost sight of this, and we need to resurrect it and repair it. In when we go back in history, the Iberian Peninsula, the amazing period from about 750 to 1400s, when the Arab, Christian, and Jewish communities, they didn't just tolerate each other, they infused each other. It was a period of enlightenment. It's a great book about this, the whole period, called The Ornament of the World. And great, wonderful book on that. And one of the things, the assumptions in that society over time was that everyone was taught to assume that there was more than their view. No matter what whether it was personal or cultural or educational, or anytime you exchanged with another, you would you would assume that, well, here's my view, but there's more. And how
Yes.
can we bring them? How can they add?
Yeah. 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 I mean, we are so polarized, and everyone, I'm right. No, I'm right. Instead of saying, well, let's look at, where we might both be right. And that really brings us to a piece that I wanted to talk about, which is the watcher within us and the watcher voices of others, because most of the time we don't even know what our view is because we've bought someone else's, or there's a voice telling us we're wrong to have that view.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we all, from an early age, um, and we're kind of taught this, I don't know intentionally, but it is a form of over history of social guidance or social control. We're always told, even right, you know, be good, Santa's watching, right? There's always this specter that someone's judging. And, it was during my cancer journey, waking up after one of my other surgeries, when for the first time in my life, I realized no one's watching. Which doesn't mean we're alone. No one's watching. So there are these voices and we internalize that as an inner critic. The great Argentinian writer Borges has a beautiful poem called The Watcher, and where he talks, I can't escape this other voice watching me all the time. And that gets in the way of direct living. That gets in the way of the spiritual connection. And so how do we, and part of individuation for all of us is quieting the watcher so we can hear our own soul. So, one of the things I ask in the book, it's a journal question for readers, and I, asking it when I'm with people in circle is, what's the largest voice in your mind that's not your own? What's the largest voice in your mind that's not your own? Where did it come from? How can you put it down? How can you quiet it? I had a student wonderfully share that, one of the struggles voices in her head was the critical mother who would, when she would voice something of herself, her mother would say, who do you think you are? And that
Common one.
terrible tone of voice. And what
Yeah.
we came to in our listening in that kind of circle was offering her to say, what if you took the attitude out of that and you actually entered that from a holy place? Who do you think you are? Who do
Mm.
you think you are? And that opened up a whole road to her own soul.
Yeah. Yeah, you share a story about your own father's voice coming out of your mouth at one point, and we've all done it. "Oops, that sounds like my mother."
Yes, and it was very humbling, right? After all these years, because, you know, we keep those voices going.
Yeah.
So the story, very quickly was my wife Susan and I were putting up new coat hooks in the foyer in our home, and my father was a master woodworker and but was very critical, and so I always felt uh, not handy because I could never do it right enough. And so we're trying to repair these hooks, and I'm all of a sudden I'm saying to Susan, be careful, we don't want to make a mess out of this, you know and and wonderfully, because Susan has a great sense of herself, she just turned to me and said, I don't know who's talking here, but why don't you figure that out while I fix the hooks? And all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, that was my father's voice.
Yeah.
And of course, if we don't see it, we perpetuate it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Mm. Another thing that you tackle in the book that you talk about that I think is so important is you talked about how adept we all are at hiding who we are. That in an effort to please everyone we meet, we become invisible, and that becomes corrosive, and then we begin to vanish, and we lose our perception, our voice. I think that probably applies to all of us. We don't show who we are because we've been shut down.
Well, and I think it opens up a archetypal journey for every person. D.H. Lawrence, in one of his poems, he asks the question, um, is the best self-protection hiding who you are or being who you are? And we have to come to, I feel, to learn that no, it's being who we are. And often when yes, as we hide, if I don't speak my truth, after a while I lose the ability to speak. If I'm not seen, and that's not like grabbing attention, but if I'm not visible, I start to vanish. And
Yeah,
so our job, wonderfully, like, I think of a wildflower that blooms in the forest. It doesn't wait for an audience to bloom. It does it because that's what it does. And
yeah,
and there's a great metaphor there that, flowers, they actually, once they're rooted and break ground, they reveal their inner beauty by literally turning inside out. And they do it by going nowhere. What a
mm,
great teacher for transformation and for being who we are.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the unfurling of every leaf and every flower, and yeah, showing us what's inside. Mm. You also talk about the difference between healing and justice, and that's intriguing. Why is it important to differentiate?
Well, I think that one of the things about under the category of all things are true is one of the mysteries I found in life is, sometimes at their best, healing and justice are the same thing. Sometimes, like that caterpillar, bunching and moving forward, they're sequential. One leads to the other. Sometimes they don't appear at the same time. And sometimes, at least in the developmental moments, we have to choose one before the other. And both are necessary in this world. And so one of the ways that I've come to understand the difference between healing and justice is, the word war goes back to an Indo-European root word, which means confusion. So in a lot of war, internally and between us, conflict is the the production and manifestation of constant confusion. And all the traditions give us tools, but so healing, I've come to understand as the clearing of confusion within us. And
That's an interesting one.
the commitment, and again, being human, can I be clear all the time? No. But I'm committed to clearing confusion and to continual, like falling down and getting up when I am confused, to work toward clearing it. That's healing. Justice, I've come to understand, is the clearing of confusion between us. And that proves to allow equity to happen and fairness.
That's right, because when you look at arguments, most arguments are caused by misunderstanding. Someone is interpreting something, or they don't have enough information. So, suddenly you've got a big argument. Suddenly you've got a war.
And one of the great tools for the clearing of confusion is listening, holding, and asking questions.
Yeah.
Of ourselves and between us.
Yeah. Asking questions is something that you do a lot, isn't it?
Yes, I love questions. There's a great line in the Talmud, the Jewish Talmud, that says, "Why ruin a perfectly good question with an answer?" When
you can come up with several answers.
Well, and one of the things that I'm so devoted to questions, a life of questions, because in the outer world, there are answers to questions. What time to show up here for us to be together? What configurations to do? There is an answer. When does the milk expire and it's no longer good? But that's in the outer world of circumstance. In the inner world of meaning.
Here's what I found.
Geez, my watch is going crazy. And in the inner world of meaning, questions don't have answers. Questions open up relationships, and they invite practices. I'm so humble. So often when I'm in circle with people, and people ask these deep questions about their lives, I'm so touched to see that the answer is that their question is inviting them into a practice, not an answer.
Yeah. We're going to take a short break now, Mark. We'll be back in a few moments. You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and my guest today is poet, philosopher, teacher, and award-winning author Mark Nepo, and we're discussing his latest book, Falling Down and Getting Up, Discovering Your Inner Resilience and Strength, which helps us navigate the challenges of life by transforming our experience into a chance for deepening and renewal. We'll be back with more from Mark Nepo in a few moments. Stay tuned.
OMTimes TV. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. OMTimes Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, OMTimes offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an OMTimes magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on OMTimes TV and broadcasting it across the extensive OMTimes radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. OMTimes. Open yourself to the possibilities.
Hello, I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes' flagship radio show, What Is Going On? And as an author, editor, and 13 times book judge who's read thousands of books, and interviewed hundreds of authors, I'm constantly asked what's really worth reading and what's not. So I created the No BS Spiritual Book Club to help you save time and money by picking the brains of discerning names who've walked this path before you. There's no catch, no fees and no BS, just an ever-growing library of 10 best spiritual book lists from some of your favourite authors and teachers, plus free book excerpts, audios and video interviews with people like Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., David G., Lee Harris, Mark Nepo and more. From well-known classics to hidden gems you've never heard of, it's the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to enlighten your journey of self-discovery. So why not join the club? Get inspired and save money at the nobsspiritualbookclub.com.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. Mark Nepo, in Falling Down and Getting Up, you make an interesting point, which is a lesson that we all should take to heart. And I want to quote this. You say, humbly, after a lifetime of teaching, I've come to see that you can't change anyone. So what am I doing in the many circles I convene all over the world? So what is the answer to that question?
Well, so humbly, it has shifted my understanding of what it is to be a teacher. And I think to be a teacher, formally or informally, this is more than just having a classroom. As a friend, we take turns being a teacher, as family, with loved ones. So for me, being a teacher is like being a greenhouse. We provide light and warmth, and the things before us will grow as they are meant to grow, not how I want them to grow or how even in my goodwill I think they should grow. And so, it changes. It's not a curriculum, whatever it is that I try to impart to someone, or to, the French philosopher Rabelais. He said, a child is not a vase to be filled, but a fire to be lit. And that's not just for a child, that's for anyone. And so, it is to hold the environment of growth so that the living things before us can grow to their own rhythms and their own innate worth. And it's actually it's a presumption for me, even with good intention, to think I know how you should grow. Not this raises, the wonderful sociologist from the 60s, Ivan Illich. Toward the end of his life, he was interviewed, and he defined spiritual hospitality as helping another cross a threshold. And I love that, because it doesn't say that, oh, this is the threshold, or I'll help you if you do it this way, or why don't you? No, it's simply, how can we be a bridge for each other?
I don't know whether it was ever thus, or whether it just seems to me that this is the way things are becoming. But we see all the time, there's that phrase, helicopter parenting, where we want to teach someone so much. We want them to know what we know. We want them to avoid all the mistakes because we've made them for them, And so we're always trying to teach them something instead of allowing, our children to find things out for themselves. And it's such a difficult thing to hold yourself back from that part of it, to give them half the picture.
Absolutely. And I have my oldest friend, Robert, and his godfather to his three kids who are now in their 30s. But when Eli, the youngest, was learning how to ride a bike, a two-wheeler, from a three-wheeler, and I'll never forget, I just happened to be there when, as a mother and father, was this conversation before Eli got up on the two-wheeler, and his mom said, and both are wonderful, right? But his mom said, "Well, I want to kind of go alongside him, so to help to keep him from falling." And Robert said, "Well, he is going to fall. I want to be there to help him get back up." And there's it is hard. How can we? I mean, certainly, if something is going to hurt you, I want to try to prevent that, even physically. But yeah, so much of our journey is being there when uh, we have to learn for ourselves. And it reminds me at the end of the wonderful novel Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. And Siddhartha is this immense spiritual character who tries on all the different ways of living to finally arrive at what's true for him. And he winds up at the end of the book with a friend being Vasudeva. The two of them are ferrymen. They simply, which is another wonderful metaphor for a teacher, they simply help people cross the river of life. And he had a son, Siddhartha, from when he was living at one point with Kamala, who was a courtesan, and she has now died. And the son, who's like 12 or 13, is sent. He lives with Siddhartha, this sage, and he's hell on wheels. He's just, a typical teenager. And so Siddhartha is depressed, sitting on the edge of the river. He doesn't know how to help his son. And his friend Vasudeva sits by him. He puts his arm around him. He says, "My friend, do you think you went through all you went through to rob your son of his journey?"
That's a lovely way to phrase it, yeah, because it is their journey, yeah, and it's how they're going to learn. Mm. You claim that the things we suffer and the things we love provide us with an inner curriculum. Explain that to me.
Well, I think that the things that we go through become our teachers if we don't resist them. Um, and there's a Hindu term, upa guru, which means the teacher that is next to you at this moment. There's always a teacher there. And I want to couple that with, Emerson had this wonderful, I can't quote it exactly, but I'll paraphrase. He said that, every problem we have is waiting in hieroglyphic in the experience before us. If we live it before we apprehend it as truth. And so experience is one of our great teachers. And the things we love and the things that are difficult are there to unfold the next part of our path. Now, this is not to reframe and say that everything that's difficult is a wonderful thing. No, no. One of the paradoxes of all things are true is sometimes we break and we just break. And no, nobody likes that. And sometimes we're broken open and we take turns. And, when I break and you're broken open, you can help me. And tomorrow we'll switch. And when we're broken open, the teaching is available to us. So another wonderful thing that, or saying that's so it was helpful here. There was a samurai in the 1600s, Masahide, and he put down his sword and became a student. He wanted to apprentice with Basho to learn how to be a poet. I would have loved to interview that guy. Like, what happened, right? But his famous haiku is, "My barn having burned to the ground, I can see the moon more completely." My barn having burned to the ground, I can see the moon more completely. And that kind of holds the essence of both seeing things as they are, all things are true, and that our experience is our teacher, this inner curriculum, because there's no minimizing the loss of the barn. That's real, and that has its own teaching.
Mm.
And whatever is opened is more important than what opens us. And now that the barn is out of the way, oh my God, I didn't realize this vastness was there. And we're asked to be students of both the barn burning down and, oh my God, there's the moon. I had no
Mm.
idea.
Yeah, I was thrilled to see in the book, in your chapter as we go, that you shared some of your own teachers through the books that you gave to us on the No BS Spiritual Book Club, and a few more that you didn't get a chance because we limited it to 10. Would you share some, and beautiful stories there too, would you share with us just a little bit about some of your teachers, who
Yes.
you learned the most from?
Yeah. So, I think a couple there, well, one was Siddhartha, which I read, when I went to, when I was just going to college, before I got there. This was in the late 60s. And wonderfully, someone had the idea to give all the incoming freshmen Siddhartha to read, and then come in the summer for a week and discuss this before embarking on college. Well, that changed my life. That was remarkable. That was a remarkable thing to do. It changed my lens and my perspective on everything and on this journey of what it is to be here. Another kind of amazing teaching for me was the book by Helen Luke. She was a Jungian analyst, she became an unexpected teacher for me. And she had written a book, Dark Wood to White Rose. And it's all about the journey of transformation in Dante's Divine Comedy. And interestingly, when I had come across it, I had mistakenly thought it was literary criticism, so I didn't read it right away. And in working with Helen in person, there was something I was going through, a difficulty, and she asked me, not out of ego, she said, "Have you read Dark Wood to White Rose yet?" And I said, "Oh, gee, Helen, oh, no, not yet." And I wound up reading it after she passed away, which was very touching because I heard her voice as I read it. And this is a remarkable lens on the journey of being alive, because Dante's Divine Comedy, as we know, it's the journey from hell through purgatory to paradise. But she interpreted it this way. She said, no, this is a metaphor for living in the world, and it's not a climb up a mountain. It's all horizontal. We're all the same distance from heaven and hell, and difficulty and joy, and that hell is the cost of false living. Purgatory is the struggle to be real, and paradise is the struggle to stay real.
Mm.
And notice we never get rid of struggle, which is why we have to love the process. So that was an immense transformation for me, to then look at, well, how am I? Yeah, what? And the reason she had asked me that I didn't understand at the time, because she saw me struggling with my own false living. And she was inviting me to lean into being more authentic. I'll share one more is, which is just so humbling, and another paradox is, so I was raised Jewish, but being almost dying from cancer threw me into being a student of all paths. And you know, from my work, I welcome all the traditions. I have great tie to the Jewish heritage, but I'm a student of all paths. Now, I had another mentor of mine was Joel Elkes, an amazing man who was a child of the Holocaust, a doctor, a painter. I met him when he was 80. He lived to be 102. And so I was in my late 50s, and he was Jewish as well. And I've spent my whole life finding my own way my own way of thinking, my own way of learning, my own way of being, and just being who I am. And so I was in my late 50s, and he gave me the book, The Earth is the Lord's by Abraham Heschel. Now, Heschel wrote this book to chronicle the history of the European Jewish mind because the Holocaust had decimated so much of that culture. And Joel just said, I wonder what you'll think of this. So he gave me the book. I read the book. And of course, after all my own individual journey, my mind works like the European Jewish mind, based on questions and dialogue and inquiry, and there are no answers. And so it was so humbling that by being true to myself, I found I did belong to a tribe.
Mm.
Not by being indoctrinated or doing what somebody
Yes.
told me, but by
Yes.
being who I am, I wound up there anyway.
Yeah, you came to it naturally. Yeah. You have a list of the things that you learned from those voices that you're sharing with us. And I just picked out a few because it's quite a long list, but you know, I love them. To outlive the cost of being hidden and endure the cost of being seen so we can live without masks. To have our hearts serve our mind and by so doing become a vessel for care and kindness. To stay devoted to the magic inherent in all things. Of everything on that list, which is, your favorite, or which speaks
Well,
to you the most?
I think that the most, about the heart, I think the heart is the inlet between our soul and the world, and the devotion to keeping our heart clear and open. And I do believe our heart is our strongest muscle, and that we feel it. It's such another paradox is that, often when we feel, we're so sensitive as human beings that we feel both in joy and pain. We feel things, this is unbearable. And we understand that, we have compassion for each other, but it's actually not unbearable. It's a sign that the heart is working. That the heart, when we feel that
Yeah.
much, it's a sign that finely tuned instrument is registering very precisely, and that is a gift that if we can keep learning. I'm always amazed, and I'm 72, and there's a constellation of times in my life where my heart was broken, where life as I knew it was shattered. And I don't know how it works, but at least to this point, I can report every time my heart was put back together, bigger, stronger, gentler, and more loving.
Mhm.
And at the time, I thought, how am I ever going to go on? But falling down and getting up,
No.
caterpillar, two
Yeah.
steps forward, one step back.
Mm. Yeah. You end each chapter with your trademark questions to walk with, to journal, to ponder in conversation with a friend or loved one. Out of all the questions that you offer people in this book, what would you say is the most important one to ponder?
I think the most important one to ponder is how how in my essence do I meet you? How in my essence do I meet you? Because we are at the center the same. You know, the Christian mystic, the Desert Fathers, had this wonderful meta in the third century, had this great metaphor for our sameness and our uniqueness, our individuality and our community. And it was a wagon wheel. And the metaphor was every soul is a spoke in that wheel. And when we go out in our life of becoming, no two people hold up the same, everybody holds up a different part of the rim, and the rim is community. That is our uniqueness. But as I go in my being, we all meet in the center hub, which is God. And so we are both unique and wonderfully the same. And you take any one of those parts out, and the wheel is not a wheel.
Mm.
You remove the spokes, you remove the rim, you remove the hub.
Yes.
So, yes, how in my essence do I realize that I am you and you are me?
Who do you walk with your questions? Is it your wife?
Oh, yes, my wife, Susan, my dear, I have wonderful friends who are family, um, and our dog Zuzu, who meets all of my questions with her simple, unflagging being. Yes, yes. So yeah, and I think this is something important too. And with life itself, I'm a firm believer in befriending life. We tend with our minds, we want to understand life, or we want to, experience life. But life itself is living, and we treat friends differently than we do objects we want to understand. So how do we befriend life and walk? So and this is one other thing I'll share about this, which is so to me amazing, is that the word academy, and we think of academic is today is very dry, and but to recover the truth of that word, academy goes back to the Greek, and it goes back to Plato's school was called the academy. It wasn't a formal school. He had no buildings. Plato's school, Plato walked around with having conversations like we're having.
Mm.
And when he was in his 30s, he had a rich uncle who died and left him an olive grove. The word academy in ancient Greek means sacred grove. And that's what's most important, is to recover the sacred grove.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And how much can we teach without teaching, just by having conversations like this?
Absolutely. And that's the gift of the all the conversations you hold, all the conversations I'm blessed to be in with these circles that I'm able to be with. It is kind of the life, but that along with story have always been the great teachers in the world.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've got about a minute left now, Mark. Tell me, what is coming up for you event-wise, and have you got your next book?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. So what's coming up wonderfully, I'm going to be teaching a couple of special places in the coming year. So in January, and this is up on my website, marknepo.com. But in January, I will be leading uh, a week journey in Costa Rica at a wonderful location for about 20 or 30 people through the organization Global Journeys, and that's you can find information about that on my website. And in February, I'll be back at the Modern Elder Academy in leading a week, a different week in Baja in Mexico. And that also folks can find out. And the next book, interestingly, so the next book, which will come out in 2024, is on spirit and friendship. It's called "You Don't Have to Do It Alone: The Power of Friendship." And I think, you've heard the Dalai Lama wonderfully says that kindness is his religion. Oh, I think, I guess if pressed, I'd have to say friendship is mine. And I've always wanted to unearth or retrieve a book about spirit and friendship.
I shall look forward to that one. I hope you'll come back and speak to us when the time comes.
Oh, absolutely.
Mark Nepo, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always fun to speak with you and read your books.
Oh, thank you so much, Sandie.
Falling Down and Getting Up, Discovering Your Inner Resilience and Strength is published by St. Martin's Essentials. And for more information on Mark Nepo's books and retreats, visit marknepo.com and 3intentions.com, where you can sign up for his weekly Reflections newsletter. And if you're interested in participating in any of Mark's webinars, check out live.marknepo.com. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer. Thanks for being with us today. I'll be back with you for another edition of What is Going On at the same time next week. Till then, it's goodbye from me and a heartfelt thank you to Mark Nepo.